Sci-fi films before Star Wars shared a common element. They were often depressing and about as uplifting as a plane with no engine trying really hard to take off. Here's a film about the last man on Earth, but just to hammer home the bad news, it's Charlton Heston. This is The Omega Man. The Omega Man bears no relation to the Illustrated Man, Spider-Man, or the Man with the Golden Gun, but it's a one-off adaptation of Richard Matheson's book, I Am Legend, not to be confused with my autobiography, I Am a Legend, which is available on Lulu and in all good wet markets. In the 50s, there was a goofy horror film adaptation of I Am Legend called The Last Man on Earth, which has Vincent Price as, spoilers, the last man on Earth. Of course, more recently, there was a big budget version of the story, this time with Will Smith, and, spoilers, a lot of really bad CGI zombies. Somewhere between the two was 1971's The Omega Man, directed by Boris Sagal. In the late 60s and early 70s, Charlton Heston appeared in 3 classic science fiction films. Each time he played a character who was one man against the rest of the world. Here he's the last man on Earth, but he's really just a man on Earth. Heston is Robert Neville, an army scientist who's apparently the only unscathed survivor of a biological war that's destroyed the world. Neville survives by taking a highly experimental test vaccine developed too late to help anyone but the producer of this film.
Alright, how much you give me in trade for my Ford? Really? Thanks a lot, you cheating bastard.
He spends his days talking to himself, watching the movie version of Woodstock.
They sure don't make pictures like that anymore.
And searching for the daytime hidey hole of the night-dwelling mutants led by Matthias. To be fair, that's kind of how I spend my days. So he's not exactly the last man on Earth, but at this stage he's the only one able to go to the beach without a bucket of SPF 200.
Found another one. One of Matthias's group. Dead of plague. Sweep continues.
Neville is pretty well organised, all things considered. He has his pre-war townhouse set up as a mini fortress, stocked with guns and food, and outfitted with Ring.com cameras. Privacy be damned.
Hi, big brother. How's your ass?
Neville's self-isolation has now lasted 2 years, and so he started talking to himself.
You know, you used to be a nice guy once. You know that?
I guess we've all been there. Neville also practices social distancing, which in his case is keeping 6 feet away from the mutants before he fires his machine gun at them. He cuts a slightly tragic and obsessed figure, with the thought of destroying the mutants before they get him being the thing that keeps him going. I mean, that's understandable. How many people kept eating dodgy subs from Subway just to fill the card for a free dodgy sub? Of course, he's not the only man, and Lisa shows up, along with Dutch, and he's rescued from being the main course at a mutant barbecue. Lisa and Dutch aren't immune like Neville, and they are sheltering some kids who are at various stages of mutation. They'll eventually turn. Lisa's brother, Richie, seems ready to cross over at any time, so Neville manages to develop a serum from his own blood. But kids being kids, Richie's been playing a fair bit of Animal Crossing in his self-isolation, and he just wants everyone to be friends. So he gives out Neville's friend code to Matthias in the hopes of fostering peace.
Well, everybody could be normal again.
You mean we could be as we were before?
Yeah, I guess so. The way we were.
The way we were.
Instead, however, Matthias and his cult don't want anything to do with a cure to a curable disease.
If you're organized, why don't you try finding a cure?
There is none!
They're like anti-vaxxers with bad wigs, but no Facebook, so something's got to give. Heston plays this role in a way that few others at the time could have matched.
Oh, you silly bastard. It starts with you asking yourself idiot questions.
He's authoritative, yet somewhat tortured, obsessive but clearly making an extra effort to hang on to his sanity.
There is no phone ringing, damn it!
Anthony Zerber's Matthias is suitably creepy as a cult leader. 2 diametrically opposed viewpoints are always a great source of drama, but also, funnily enough, a great driver of action.
All right, you son of a bitch, you just hold tight. Up against the wall, you mother.
Rosalind Cash's Lisa is funky with her very early 70s dialogue.
And if you just have to play James Bond, I'll bust your ass.
Yes, ma'am.
Easily cheesy, but somehow works. Her sudden change into a mutant is handled well enough, though semi-predictable.
Very complicated, Doctor. Still, you know, if it was me, I'd be living on top of City Hall or better than that, the Oxy Tower.
Dutch seems like a walking collection of how people in their 40s thought people in their 20s spoke, but regardless, the whole thing just about works. What budget the film had is, by and large, used wisely. While The Omega Man doesn't have an epic scope, it never feels cheap, though if you want to pick holes, you can still see cars moving in some of the establishing shots of a supposedly dead city. In 1971, they didn't have computer graphics or COVID-19. The intimate feel to the action gives the movie just enough thrills. Neville always seems to be one mistake away from being overrun by the mutants. Why doesn't he just pack up a U-Haul and move before setting fire to the city? Because it's his home, and he's not moving just because some lousy hipsters are trying to drive him out with their gentrification. When it comes to post-apocalyptic movies and TV, I always like people rummaging around in abandoned stores. And Omega Man is a film that gives me some weird amount of satisfaction, with multiple scenes of stores being ransacked. Maybe that's what the Will Smith version of I Am Legend was missing. There's no scene of Will Smith loading up on boxes of peanut butter pretzels from an abandoned Trader Joe's. That would have easily made I Am Legend a much better film. Omega Man mostly has smart dialogue, apart from where it's trying to mimic hip dialogue of other contemporary films. It's got a small cast, so a table read could be done comfortably in an IHOP, and lots of shots with stunt people who look nothing like the people they're meant to be doubling. It also has a neat score by composer Ron Grainer. Yeah, the same guy who wrote the theme to Doctor Who. What's not to love? The title, The Omega Man, doesn't refer to Heston's choice of watch. Heston is the last man on Earth, and Omega, being the last letter of the Greek alphabet, sounds cooler than the alternative, the Z-Man, which sounds like something Airbnb guests in Germany would need a blacklight to see.
Everybody but me.
Even in this day and age, Omega Man isn't super scary, as a semi-horror thriller about the end of the world wrought by a terrifying biological agent. Oh, maybe it is. There's an easy way to check. If you've watched the whole review so far, hands up who needed to change underpants. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.